Hello, everyone. It's Michelle with Twin Flame Warriors. Welcome to the fourth installment in our bonus podcast series, Portrait of a Twin Flame. Today, we welcome portrait subject Erinn. Erinn's story is different from many twin flame stories we hear commonly discussed. Erinn has never met her twin flame in 3D, but shares a strong 5D bond with him. Erinn and her twin work on building their connection continually. Interestingly, Erinn is married and has several children. She found out about her twin flame, though she did not know at the time what the connection was, at age 19 before she married. Her husband is aware of her twin flame connection and supports her in her spiritual awakening journey, though he himself is of a more agnostic belief system. Erinn, who shares answers with the twin flame community on Quora, considers herself, and I quote, just a girl on a spiritual awakening journey with a twin flame. She has not only accepted the non-physical nature, so far, of her connection with her twin flame, but she embraces and celebrates it. In this special podcast, Erinn shares the path she uncovered to learn to listen to her intuition, follow her spirit guides, and surrender the twin flame obsession that so many of us struggle with. Before we begin our interview, please consider donating to support Justin's and my twin flame soul mission. We provide our podcast free of charge, trusting that the universe will support us in this work so that we may continue being beacons and catalysts for spiritual growth. If we've helped you on your journey, we welcome your blessing. The link to our donation page is in the show notes, or we receive via PayPal at michelle@twinflamewarriors.com. We also offer coaching, mentoring, regression, card reading, and other services that could benefit you on your journey. Check out our menu of services today at twinflamewarriors.as.me. Now, without further ado, I give you Portrait of a Twin Flame, Erinn. Hi, Erinn. I'd like to welcome you to the program. We're really excited to interview you for our Portraits podcast today. For the audience, Erinn lives in Southern Oregon. She has been on her twin flame journey, which for her is very synonymous with her spiritual awakening journey, as it is for many of us, though we may not realize it at first. Erinn has been on this journey for about 18 months, and she really did a lot of it absolutely on her own, under her own power, under her own guidance, and working with her spirit team, and really learning to listen to her intuition and hone on the messages that were being given to her to guide her along this path. And the really special thing about Erinn's journey is that her connection with her twin flame is entirely 5D at this point. She has not met him in 3D, but she does know who he is. Erinn, welcome. I appreciate you being here, and I'd love to share with the audience a little bit about maybe the moment that you realized that this was your twin flame, and then we'd love to hear you go back and tell us more about it.
So glad to be here.
Well, we're really happy to have you here. I'm excited. You've got such great perspective, and I love that you view this as first a spiritual journey, and secondly a twin flame flavor of a spiritual awakening journey. I'd love to hear that perspective.
I see him as a tool, and he's a very glorious tool. And I don't mean to downplay him, but your twin is not the main focus. And so that's not the main focus I took this journey with. I took this journey knowing that they were using my twin to tell me things, send me message, spark something in me, to trigger me, to inspire me. So more of just a girl having a spiritual awakening with a twin flame. So last year, I was home due to COVID, and I had already known before then it was actually time to start taking care of myself. So it was the perfect opportunity for me to finally do that. You know, I stayed home. I was going to meditate for my mental health, for my physical health, and finally just sit around and be a little happier. When I finally got the opportunity to do that, I was just kind of sitting there meditating and doing what everybody else originally starts to do and trying to keep their minds quiet. I was interrupted by these overwhelming thoughts of this man that I've known of for a very long time, actually. You know, it kind of drove me crazy that at one point I just wanted to I wanted to focus on me. So I kept trying to, shush him out and say it's me time. And for the first time in a long time, I was really trying to just focus on me, what I needed and what I wanted. So it was a little frustrating at first, but then I realized the thoughts just continued. Like every moment of every day was bombarded with thoughts of him. I was trying to focus on myself. And so eventually I, turned to trusty old Google, who had always been there to help me with all my many questions in the world, and started looking for answers on why I was suddenly feeling like I was obsessing. And it was kind of like an uncontrollable obsession of the thoughts that were coming out. And I just wanted to I wanted to figure out how do I slow them down and go back to focusing on myself. So I found many things, like the psychological answers, and I found the therapeutical answers and stuff like that. And I knew that, it wasn't anything mentally wrong with me and all that other stuff. And so one day I just sat there in meditation, and I think I just threw my hands up in the air and I said, I don't know what to do. What do I do? Where do I go? What do I look for? What's going on? I ended up, after meditation, kind of Googling it one more time and coming across a whole list of people having the exact same thing on however I worded it at that particular time. All these stories about twin flames. I thought to myself at the beginning that this is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. The more I read, though, the more I went, wait a minute, this explains so much that I just kind of left as a mystery for so long in the back of my brain that I would just kind of pass over and, move on with my day throughout the year. And then I went through my moments of like, this still can't be. How is this even possible? Because who ended up being my twin was a man that I saw on TV over 20 years ago. And while he was in the entertainment industry, and there was just something about his eyes, his voice, his smile that just kind of moved me so much in all kinds of ways, like just made me happy and calm and feel at peace, but also interested and connected. It drew me in. And for a long time, I didn't understand why. He just sort of captivated me. Being young and naive, I was like, well, that's never going to happen. So I just kind of left him where he was as a thought that just hung around in the back of my head while we both moved on with our lives. Eventually, he faded from, the entertainment industry, but he never faded from my thoughts. Like, he was always there every day because I could just never shake him. But he was there every time I needed him. If I was upset, just the idea of him would help calm me. If I was crying, it would help me soothe me. And if I needed to see something happy, his smile would just give me a little boost when I needed it. We just kind of moved on, as I say. There was always something, but I could never figure it out.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Were you, when you discovered this, when you first knew of your twin, were you married? Were you single? Can you paint us a small picture of what was going on with you personally so we understand how this fits in?
When I first noticed him, I was about 19. I was dating a wonderful man, and we were engaged. We were planning on getting married. I was in love with him. So to me, it was kind of confusing to see this person on the TV kind of poking at my feelings in a way. And it confused me. And I was just like, well, so I rationalized it. Like, okay, he's just on the TV. It's a small crush. I will move on with the man who loves and adores me and is standing right here in front of me. And he kind of became this, my husband knew about my crush with him, as we'll call it. He was teaching me about it for like 20 years, off and on, because it was just, one of those things. My husband, we like to tease each other, and that's one of the things he teased me about. So we got married, and my husband and I, we got married. We had 3 children and went on with life, trying to create whatever 19-year-olds are trying to create with their life.
You got married and were happily married and began a family. So then what was it that happened around the time that you, I know COVID was the reason that you ended up going home, but can you take us through a little bit of what happened with you leading up to that time of going out for an extended period?
my health was pretty bad. I had been struggling for a long time with some health issues, even mental ones. I had suffered depression for over 30 years, since I was 10. After having it for so long, I kind of had enough. Finding over, the 20-year marriage that all these reasons why I had depression, some of them had to do with my health, and some of them just had to do with other things that I didn't know how to take care of. I didn't know how to deal with. I didn't know how to solve. And I didn't know how to overcome the depression that I had been trying to so diligently overcome. A few years back, I ended up getting another health condition. I have chronic fatigue. I am stubborn, so I refuse to let this chronic fatigue be in my life, no matter how much it kept trying. I know people say that, their spiritual awakening and their twin turned their lives upside down, but it was not my twin who turned my life upside down. It was not my spiritual awakening that turned my life upside down. It was the debilitating event of having chronic fatigue that turned my life upside down.
That was your catalyst. That illness really turned your life upside down and put you on the path.
And it did. It was a slow path, probably because I was so stubborn. I just kept refusing to let this disability get me down. After a while, I broke myself down by doing it. I was doing nothing but harm to my own body and my own self and my own mental health by forcing myself not to take time to stop and just take care of myself. So actually before COVID, my husband and I had already made a plan to start rearranging life so that we could be more comfortable, so that I could take more time off of work and be home to take care of myself. My body needed it. And I was breaking it down. I was just beating my body down into a mode of where it was actually shutting down and not functioning very well. So when COVID came along, I know it was a horrible thing for the rest of the world, but to my own personal self, I ended up taking it as a blessing. I needed it. I needed it one way or another. I needed to be home, and it was the time. When COVID hit, I wasn't actually ready to go home and be home. But due to COVID, it was, you're going home now, so just take it as it comes or just go with the flow. So that's what I did. I stayed home, and I decided it was time to start taking care of my health and myself. It was just amazing.
Tell us about the journey. Tell us what happened when you really stopped all the things that were hurting you and made a conscious choice. You put a stake in the ground for your soul, for your spirit, and your body even, because everything that you were going through spiritually and mentally and emotionally was manifesting in these physical illnesses. So I'd love to hear, what started happening for you at that moment when you said, this has got to be about me. I have to be better. I have to be healthy.
Well, I started with trying to just learn to meditate. And I guess that I first kind of struggled with, because I thought meditation was supposed to be this very peaceful, quiet. There's nothing about my brain that is quiet. I'm an overthinker. And I found turning it off was very difficult. But when I started kind of discovering the twin flame stuff, and I started reading into that, I was so lucky to be guided to someone somewhere making a comment about it being about a spiritual awakening. And I really started diving into that because I had heard of them before, and I knew that they were life altering. And at that moment in my life, that's what I was looking for, was something life altering. I needed something that would change, the way I thought, the way I felt about myself, and the way I felt about everything. So I kind of dove into that. There were a few things that some of them were in the beginning. I just started with meditation, and I learned that you don't need to be quiet, that I just kind of sat and said, I don't know what I'm doing. Can somebody help me?
I'm one too who I can meditate quietly now, but when I began, I couldn't. My brain, like you, wouldn't be quiet. And so I learned to use it as a different kind of tool, like a forum where I figured, eventually I realized I was inviting my spirit team in to guide me in this forum in my head during meditation. So, it works.
And at the time, that was the only thing that kind of quieted down the thoughts and slowed down my thoughts with my twin. I wasn't, it was the only time I could sit and not be consumed. I had a lot of things going on that I was always trying to work on. The only time I could ever really stop focusing on him and only focus on me was while I was meditating. So I did it for at first 10 to 20 minutes. Now I do it for like an hour because it's my own personal me time. I ended up developing with my guides a whole process that really, in a matter of a few months, completely dissolved the 30-year battle with depression I had been having. It just was moving. My husband noticed, my kids noticed, I noticed, and it was probably the first time in my life that I did not feel like there was this dark cloud hanging over me, waiting to rain.
Miraculous.
Every time I meditated, it seemed to be like it was just slowly like a storm when it's clearing up and you see the sun rays coming through, and it would just clear and break up, and then eventually it just dissolved. That to me was the biggest blessing of this whole journey, when I really just sat down and let my guide help me learn how to do and how to come up with everything. They just guided me.
When they were giving you that guidance, what would it sound like? Or would they give you steps, or was it just, how did it work?
Some of it was, some of it I would just be guided to read something, and then I would go, you know what, let's try that while I'm meditating. Like the idea behind gratitude, just sitting down and going through the things that you are thankful and grateful for, and focusing on some positive of your life for a certain amount of time and just really soaking that in. For the beginning, I would sit with my meditation, and then I would just, say, thank you. And I would say it to the universe, just thank you. Thank you for my beautiful children. I have 3 amazing children who I love and adore. And so it didn't matter what I needed, if I was specific or general. I just said thank you. And if on days I couldn't think of things, I just picked specific things for making this kid tell me this funny joke, or this kid be cheeky and say something that cut my sadness, or would interfere with my frustration and just make me laugh. And my kids were always good for laughing. They were always the first thing that I tell the universe I am grateful for, because they are amazing. And I am so blessed to have them. And then I would be thankful for, my husband. Without him, I would not be who I am today. Through the ups and downs, for the hard times and the easy times and the happy times and the sad times, it was still all worth it, because I grew as a human being. I was proud, even at that moment, of who I was. I just compounded it from there. And even if it was something little, like, thank you for the house that I'm sitting in, the roof over my head, or my dog, or my cat, or something like that, I just continued for as long as it took to soothe me and put me into a calm moment, or until I felt that I was done.
Well, and you even used the word just now. You even said self-love. I think you were being led down a path to self-love by, first of all, feeling gratitude inside yourself for what was around you, and then beginning to see everything around you reflected in you and growing in that self-love. I mean, that for me was kind of a first step, and it started with gratitude the same way. The tiniest bit for me at first of gratitude was really hard to muster. Even it had to get down to as little as, oh, look, there's a new weed growing by the side of the sidewalk on my walk today. Well, that's different than yesterday. Something grew. I can remember those being my early thoughts when I started finding gratitude. And then eventually it became, I love myself. I am so fucking awesome. I am like, I can't believe that I succeeded in coming here and doing this, right? What a vast difference. And you walked that same path too, totally led by your guides. That's amazing.
Yeah. They totally, and it started off small with little changes, and it did take time. They just kept adding things for me to add into. I would read an article, or I would watch a video, and I would just try it. Just tried it into my meditation and add it just for a few minutes. And I would do it for about a week. And if it fit, it fit. If it didn't, it didn't. I would try different things. I would try different songs, different music, background noises to help me meditate. but I would just try everything because I realized that I needed to build my own method, my own process.
Right.
And so, yeah, it started with gratitude. And then it turned into the I am affirmations. I was grateful for everything that I had received, but I always had a hard time being grateful for some things of me. I realized I was the hardest on myself than anybody else in this world. I was harsher. I was meaner to myself than I was to anybody. I just beat myself up over things that I didn't need to beat myself up over. And that a lot came from my childhood. And it just continued to process because over the 30 years, I never learned how to speak nice to myself. And so my guide led me to do that. I just went, I am strong. I'm feisty is my favorite one because I am. I'm a very feisty person.
Yeah.
And that was, I just would start picking the things that I did like about myself. I'm feisty. I'm a mama bear. Don't mess with my kids. So I will get feisty on you. I have courage. And I, eventually over time just went, I'm beautiful. And I'm proud to be me. And I am proud of how far I've come and everything I've lived through and everything I've survived, all that I have changed in all these years. I actually started noticing that I wasn't feeling depressed. And it was so wonderful to finally just feel that weight lifted that I didn't even realize. And it took a few months for me to look back and realize that a lot of my depression stems from how I spoke to myself and how I treated myself and what I thought of myself. And that by learning to just take that unconditional love that we feel in the beginning, and by going, not only do I want to love my twin, I want to learn to love myself. So I tried it. It was amazing. We all sit around and we say, in your twin flame journey, you're supposed to learn to love yourself first in order to bring your twin towards you. And that made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. When you read on people online and stuff and how their advice, some of it gets a little confusing.
I had to find Justin first, and I had to feel inexplicable, absolute, unconditional love for him in an affair situation. We were having an affair. We never intended to be together for any extended amount of time. And I remember this day, I just looked at him and I'd already been through my running phase and I'd gone back to him and I couldn't understand this freaking connection. Like, why did I feel this way about this man of all men? Not my husband, not any boyfriend I'd ever had, none of the other men that I was having affairs with or women, but him. And I was like, I just said it. I said, I love you. And I remember the feeling of the air going out of both of us. Like I felt it. And I thought, I'm crazy. Why did I say that? I said, you don't have to say anything back. I have no idea why I said that. I don't know why I said that. And he just accepted it. Like he didn't say yes, no. He didn't get upset. He didn't run. He just accepted it. And we went on. But I realized in retrospect, right? Hindsight being 2020, I was like, oh my gosh. It was after that moment when I popped out and said that to him that I began to realize that what I felt for him, why couldn't I feel that for myself? And it was a very weird juxtaposition to have of this feeling of like, I feel something for this other person that is so foreign to me. Why do I love him? And I began to go down this road of like figuring out why I loved him. And every time I found out a little bit something more about why I loved him, I realized that it was because it was something that was like about me, but I'd buried it. And it wasn't the me that I was showing the rest of the world or even the me that I knew anymore. Anyway, it's interesting that you said that because I felt like I had to experience that emotion outside of me first and then go look for it in me.
And I think that's what a lot of this comes from. We all of a sudden are bombarded by this over controlling sense of this unconditional love. And our twin is the face of that. But I don't think that it necessarily all comes from the twin. I think it's the unconditional love that we're just supposed to feel. It's God's unconditional love, which was actually quite hard for me to even accept because of my childhood and my depression. I hated him. I hated God. And I was just okay leaving him out of everything. So when I first started this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to the universe and I'm not going to talk to God. that didn't work out very well for me because I realized it was all connected. And the hardest part of the beginning of this whole thing for me was actually to realize that this hatred that I had held on to since I was actually 8 because of my mother passing away right before my 8th birthday. I had held on to this anger from that for well over 30 years and just let it compound more and more. And then I just kind of shoved God out of my life more and more. So the hard part to realize that everything I had been doing up to that point was wrong and that I was misunderstanding my whole entire life and that God was actually there for me the whole time I was pushing him away was very hard for me to accept. But when I did, it was very, very soothing and very calming. You know, that unconditional love I didn't always feel was coming from my twin. It was the universe and it was God.
What I saw reflected back at me from Justin was absolute acceptance of me saying, I love you, and him not reacting to it in any negative way. It was just acceptance. And that was unconditional to me. And I think that was one of the first times I truly felt like an unconditional acceptance of me. It is about God, source, divine energy, the universe. We are all one. You cannot separate us from God or God from us, or however you call the source of energy that we all are part of, right? That was kind of a new twist on me understanding my own unconditional love.
You know, and then that's because you have to understand, my twin is nowhere to be seen. He is nowhere around me. I have no contact with him. So I can't see anything on his face. He can't trigger me. So he is literally just a tool that the universe has used to motivate me or inspire me and send me signs of things I needed to focus on. They use him as more of a tool than actually as what most traditional people have experienced with their twin being around.
I'd love to have an example of that because you're right. You each are in your own vacuum in a way. And so how have some of those signs or synchronicities from him worked to help you on your part of the path?
Well, in the beginning, as everybody else does, I started experiencing thinking of him and, having all these things triggered, but knowing it was not him, that there was no physical being. And even when I went on looking for answers, everybody kept saying, well, you have to see your twin. You have to meet eyes. So it was very hard for me because I thought I was going crazy instead. Then I started having visions. The universe sent me these just amazing moments where I would experience my twin in moving ways. And I think the biggest way they used him was his happiness. Because I had suffered from depression for so long, when you are that sad all the time, you don't have an accurate meter on what happiness feels like. You see people happy and you get jealous because you're like, I wonder what that feels like. You try your hardest to achieve happiness over the years. You just try to get the depression to go away long enough to give you better moments. And I know that there's been happy days like, my children being born and married, my husband, and other moments like that. But it always seemed like the depression was never far behind. It's always lagging like a cloud that never went away. One day, I sat down to meditate. I got my spot ready, closed the door on my kids and all the animals, and I turned on the fan to block the noise out. Went to go put my headphones on to start my music, and all of a sudden, I started laughing. I didn't even know why I was laughing. I just felt it from the inside, and I just started like somebody was tickling me, but I'm not ticklish. I just started laughing, and I was like, what is going on? Like this hysterical laughter. But I just wasn't laughing. I could feel it on the inside too. I'm like, ask the universe, what is going on? And they said, this is your twin. And I was just blown away. At first I thought it was about just feeling his happiness. And so I sat and I was like, I just started laughing. And I decided, okay, instead of meditating, I'm going to sit and I'm just going to indulge in this happiness because I've never felt this before. In the 30 years that I had had depression, I had never felt this level of happiness before. And it blew me away. It was amazing. So I sat and I indulged, and I just sat there and in my meditation pose, and I just pictured him laughing. And I think I was even rolling on the floor laughing about, about the amazing feeling. But I ended up kind of on the floor, kind of laughing. Like he was just, I don't even know what was so funny on his end, but they're like, this is your twin and his happiness.
They were showing you. Mm-hmm.
Yes, they were. And the thing was, is that they weren't just showing me his happiness. They were showing me something that I actually had deep down inside that I didn't know was there. And they were showing me that I was capable of achieving it and feeling that happiness for myself, within myself, without needing him to pull that out of me. So that's when I really just started embracing everything, because I wanted that happiness. I was hooked. I was addicted. And those feelings are addiction.
Yes.
You just get addicted. The unconditional love, we lose our mind over the addiction of it. We want it. We want to feel it from them. We want to give it to them. And I think so many people will get confused on how to give it to themselves. That's really hard to do.
Right. They're looking at it as a transaction with an external person. And really what it is taking that feeling in, wanting them to feel it, wanting them to have it, and then you being able to feel them being happy and you being able to be happy because your soul is happy. You inside are happy and they inside are happy. And it's really this recognition of being one. And people don't realize that. They're still looking for the transaction of, well, I make you feel good, so you need to make me feel good. Or you make me feel good, I need you to make me feel good more. It can be really, really confusing, especially with the overwhelming. These are love feelings, whether they're self-love or unconditional love or whatever. The strongest drug in the world is love. And so it's really learning, like you said, to be in a comfortable place and rediscover your balance once you've experienced this love, and not let it become a distorted force that pushes you too far one way or too far another. It's learning to embody the balance of it with everything else, I think.
Yeah. I look at it kind of like a beam of light. We are taking our unconditional love and we are trying to point it towards our twin and trying to get their attention so they point their beam of light towards us. When in actuality, we need to take that beam of light and turn it to our inside.
At ourselves
first. Because even if you don't come to union with your twin, that part alone is worth the entire journey. To just learning to stand on your own, independent, fighting your own life. And at the beginning, I was like, I shouted out into the universe, fine, if I have to learn to love myself just to meet this man, I'll do it. I probably started doing it for the wrong reasons. But I ended up doing it all for the right reasons.
Right. You discovered the other reasons along the way. Right and wrong are hard. Right and wrong, what is it really? Dark and light, it's all shades of what we do. And I think that you did what you had to do, just like I did what I had to do. I had to say, I love you to Justin and watch him reflect that back at me without conditions, with full acceptance before I could see it. And was that right? Was that wrong? I don't know. It's what worked. All of our journeys are individual.
And to me, sometimes it doesn't matter. That's why, I see all these people asking questions and you really just want to tell them that I know this is the beginning of your journey, but none of this really matters. And people's opinions about what you think you're going through or what you are going through or what you're experiencing, they don't matter.
Don't matter.
You need to turn them all off. And
Right.
that's what I did. I finally just turned all of them off to find out that they were confusing me more than anything. And I needed to let my guide do all the hard work for me.
Erinn, I think it's amazing. And I think you should tell the audience a little bit about your journey, how you did keep it all within yourself and between you and your guides. I know that you write on Quora and you write your answers and what you've discovered with your internal journey. I'd love the audience to understand a little bit how you went from being solely focused internally with your guides to now where you're with me on a podcast and you are writing on Quora, and it's beautiful writing and it's a very different perspective than many others. Not only because you are in a 5D only situation with your twin, but because for you, you did put the spiritual awakening absolutely first.
Yeah,
so how have you done that?
when I started looking at the difference between, what people were saying about twin flames, what people were saying about spiritual awakening, I realized that there was a lot of similarity. But the something that people were saying about twin flames was almost like it was nitpicked from the storylines of spiritual awakening. And it was incomplete. All I saw was frustrating people not figuring out how to do some of these things. I saw some people giving metaphysical answers, but it's very difficult to figure out how to do those things. I love Pradnya, and she on Quora altered my life 2 times with 2 quotes. The first one was her surrender quote about how to surrender. She gives this very metaphysical, clear-cut, look simple answer. I couldn't figure out, well, how do I achieve that? And that's what I think many people are trying to achieve, is they're trying to figure out, well, how do I do this? So I learned I just had to do it myself. Not only did it just occur to me, my spirit guides were kind of demanding on it. So they told me to go off of Quora after Pradnya's first post about surrendering.
So were you writing for Quora at that point or using it as a resource only?
I was using it as a resource. I was looking. I understood that everybody's journey was going to be unique, but no one had anything remotely similar to mine. Everyone had met their twin. No one had this journey where they had not met their twin, where they were without their twin, that they were doing it this way. And so it became very confusing, and it created a lot of doubt when it came to that. So I kind of started focusing on some of the spiritual aspects that I kept seeing pop up. Pradnya's post about surrendering, the image just changed me. I saw this girl on the edge of a cliff looking free, but that image was a very similar image that I had spent my life having that image in my head. But I saw it differently. I saw it as me standing on the edge of the cliff while having God trying to push me off or make me jump. And I know that was my depression, that I just kept feeling like God was trying to tell me, you can't do this. You're never going to make it. Just jump. Just get it all over with and jump. So when I saw that post, I cried for I think about a week straight because it was so moving that I realized in that moment that I had been seeing that image wrong in my head for 30 years, that it wasn't God trying to push me off. He was actually trying to catch me, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to release. I didn't know how to let go, and I had never learned how to surrender anything. So my guide told me to get off of, stop looking for answers, to just let them guide me into everything that I needed. It was definitely an interesting ride because sometimes I would meditate and I would ask, can you just send me somebody who can help me? What I wanted is not what I would get. I have a sense of humor, and if you have a sense of humor, you tend to have your spirit guides tend to have a little bit of a sense of humor too.
Yep.
Have funny spirit guides. Be grateful because I love my spirit guides and I love it when they're cheeky. I asked the universe to, just help send me somebody to help me figure things out. And what they did was send me on a walk with my husband in some downtown shops. And we were just hanging out with my oldest daughter and we were just doing some things. And I walked by this little shop that was now offering free tarot card reading. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go because it's free tarot card reading. I'm just going to go see what happens. I ended up with this woman in a short little introduction, and she was just wonderful. She just started, okay, she's going to answer my questions. She started laying cards out. She started, reading them and saying, this is this and that is that. And I was like, oh my God, she understands my story exactly. She had nailed my details down. I was blown away at the time. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I kind of need right now. I asked my guides for help. They sent me help. And as I sat there for a few minutes, things started to take a weird turn. They started talking about how I wasn't listening to my guides. It was interesting because I could actually feel one of them grab my head and try to shake it no. And other ones standing behind her, waving their arms in the air and shaking their heads no, like, no, don't listen. And I became confused because I was like, well, you say I'm not listening, but I can see them. I'm pretty sure I can see them and I can feel them shaking my head because I was actually trying to hold my head still because I felt a force. So I tried to move it. So I was like, okay, now I'm confused. So I asked my guides quietly, okay, help me, guide me through this. What am I supposed to do? She was, she started going on with the reading and talking about things, and some things they'd shake their head no, and some things they'd shake their head yes. And, she introduced that she was this teacher. She was to guide people and help people, and she had a program and how much she charged for it. And I was like, great, give me somebody that wants money from me. Her description of her program kind of hit something with me. I thought there was something missing. So I asked them to help me ask the right questions. As they guided me to what questions I needed to ask, her program would have cost me about $1,500. All said and done, and she was the one in charge of deciding when the program would end. $1,500 and up. I was a little feeling very confused by the end, and I'm like, I don't understand why I'm here. So I, politely took her card, and yes, if I need something, I'll definitely get a hold of you, and very kind. And went to walk away. She said something that was very unusual. She turned to me and she said, you're going to get there one way or the other. I can just help you get there faster. And then it hit me. So I walked down this flight of stairs before I started laughing, again, hysterically, because I love to laugh. I realized that this whole thing was just a hoop for me to jump through, to see one little thing, that I wasn't being patient enough with myself, and that I didn't need anyone to help me get there faster or help me get there at all. I was supposed to be doing this with just myself and my guide. In spiritual awakening, most people who go through just spiritual awakenings experience times where they kind of block themselves in, they push everybody away, because the universe is trying to change your perception. And they don't want you to have anybody else around you to influence the perceptions they want to stick in your brain.
The hermit plays its role. The hermit time of our journey is really important.
And that, to me, and then I realized that this also included twins. The reason that we are in these separation phases is because we still need to work on these perceptions. We haven't got to them to where they need to be yet. When the universe says they don't want anybody to impose on these perceptions or influence them, they include your twin.
Right, because it's a journey to self. It truly is a spiritual journey to self first.
It is. And then the last thing they want you to do is go tell your twin, if you haven't figured it out but thought you figured it out, go tell your twin what you think that you figured out. Even if it's wrong, They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to influence your twin, and they don't want your twin to influence you.
Right.
We have to discover these things.
It's funny because there's a blog post I wrote about the twin flame talk, and I posted it on Quora long ago, a few months ago. I always knew, even though I wasn't awake and aware, I knew once I found out what twin flames were, I was beginning to awaken. Then the team whispered in my ear, "You can't tell Justin. You just can't." It's in 3D, right? I was like, he'll think I'm crazy anyway. I think I'm crazy. But in 5D, he has to have the opportunity to figure this stuff out on his own. I've come to fully understand that, but I didn't understand it fully at the time. And I'm just glad that I listened to my intuition and didn't force any talk of twin flames or any codification of like what this connection was until he came to me and asked me, what is a twin flame? His wife, who knew about me, told him, she said, Michelle thinks that you're twin flames. You need to ask her about it. And he came to me and she said, I need to ask you about twin flames. What is this? And I was like, he asked me. Now I answer. That was it. We all learn it a different way. I think if we're willing to listen and really willing to heed the guidance that we're getting, we all need our own journey, even separate from our twin at times.
Yes. And that's why eventually, I learned that my journey was picked this way for very specific reasons. There were things that I read about these twin flame journeys. I did not want to have a relationship with anybody, no matter what kind of relationship I would have, where I would have to argue or have anything negative come across. And I was just like, I don't want that. These people, I felt bad for. I don't ever want that kind of relationship with anybody. even if we're friends. I grew up in a household with parents, with a father and a stepmother, who had that relationship where every day was arguing. And I don't like to argue. So I never want to harbor feelings of negativity. And I just wanted a wonderful idea of a relationship with my twin, however it turns out.
You actually made that leap very early on in your journey that many people fail to make until they've gone through these cycles of running and chasing and wanting and obsessing and denying and trying to let go, right? You looked at that all and you said, you know what? That's not what I'm manifesting in my twin flame journey. That's just another way, another way that we learn the lesson. It's interesting that you were at that point where you were ready to learn it. You must have learned in another timeline about the dangers of accepting like a less than harmonious connection at home. And obviously your parents are put there to remind you of that lesson. And then you were able to take it and apply it to your own marriage because you have a very harmonious marriage, right? You also made the further logical leap that a lot of people have a hard time with before they meet their twin or when they become obsessed with their twin, which is really, really, you throw 3D into the mix and actually meeting your twin and all the biological processes and the hormonal processes and whatever happens when you're with them, you realize that could muck up what you were working on in 5D, right? And so you manifested. Yeah, you manifest. Right. Thank you. Yes, makes it complicated. And you manifested a different path for yourself.
Yes, I embraced that while trying to find the positives of the journey to add to my gratitude. I realized that was a blessing, that I didn't have him hanging around or I didn't have access to him. I mean, I have no access to him whatsoever. There's no way I can send him a message. There's no way I can call him. There's no way I can find him. We're not even in the same state, I don't believe. I can't even tell you where he's at specifically. But I know that he's there. I know that he is working on his share because they told me. It isn't a much difficult journey to go through. And at one time I asked my guides, why is my journey different? What is it about my journey that I'm supposed to know that makes it so different? And they gave me two answers. They told me I needed to learn patience, and a lot of it. And I needed to find a way to release all of my doubts. And my entire journey, from the moment I began it to even every day, is to remind myself that I have nothing to doubt.
Journey of faith.
Yes.
Faith.
Mm-hmm. I have built with my guides an unbendable faith in the divine and in the universe and in God, to just trust them. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever happens, happens, and go with the flow. At times I tested my guides and then I laughed at them because they proved me wrong. They're there to help you. I enjoyed watching the whole process, even from inside myself, but also from outside of myself. When I would ask them to help me with a problem, the process that happened in order to help me with the problem was just a blessing. And it all came from perception. You could see these things as bad and negative, or you can see something good and you can do something with the good and appreciate the little things. It really helped, especially with my depression, like I said before. When I kept trying to remember to stop beating myself up, my guides, by asking them for help, they were the thing that made fixing my depression stick. I've tried many different ways to help myself with depression, but having an extra thought process or an extra spiritual being who has access to your brain, who can shut you down in a negative thought and remind you that you need to stop this, is actually a very helpful tool.
Right. It's very powerful.
Yes, because I would sit there and I would say, okay, I'm, this way and that way, and I would overthink, and I would go through fear, and it would just continue on and on and on, and I had no way of stopping myself. So I would ask my guides, would you help me? They actually sent me to a video I was watching of a lady who was talking about how to connect with your guides more. Her suggestion was that when you're trying to listen, to ask yourself, do you hear that? Because when you hear that phrase, people's ears tend to become more attuned.
You listen more.
To the noises. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You listen more.
I was going through a rough time where I was having these thoughts in my head and I was overthinking. And normally I would just continue going on. And one day after I learned that little trick, I asked my guides for help. And so I would have this negative thought. And after it would just start beginning, before the thought even ended, I would hear, "Do you hear that?" And I went, "Oh, well, thank you." And I would just take the time to stop. And then a little while later, the thought might pop back into my head. And again, I would hear it. "Did you hear that?" And I would realize they're sticking those thoughts in my head.
They were helping you deprogram and decouple from outworn 3D programs. It's interesting. The therapist that taught me to do that, my 3D guide, my Earth guide, she called it like a program interrupt, where you actually put a break in a computer program. She's like, you've got to stop it from looping. And so you put in an interrupt, and it was the same, but different from what it was the same process. I just learned it a different way.
Yes, because the hardest part of that whole entire process is learning to remind yourself to interrupt. You have to be in the practice of interrupting that thought process. And if you're not in the practice, that is the hardest part to figure out. How do you interrupt? When you're starting down a negative thought spiral, yeah. How do you interrupt yourself when you're consumed by it?
When I find myself in a vicious cycle, I have to do that, what you're saying. And I want to take it and I want to stop it and I want to flip it into a virtuous, thought cycle. And the interrupt is the very first. Like, you've got to even realize you're doing it and be willing to stop.
Yes. And that's where I found my guides very useful, is because when I didn't have the self-control to remember to stop, they reminded me in a very, very easy way. I found it comical and I found it wonderful and I enjoyed it. It was really effective for me to have them be so helpful with all the changes I was making, and to know that I could rely on them every time I needed them.
How did they take those teachings and help you grow in the twin flame part of your journey? Because you've learned a ton from your twin flame. I want to talk a little bit about how connected you are with him in 5D and how that relationship works. So was it your guides who led you further down that path?
A little bit, yes. They gave me a lot of the ideas and the ideology I have today. We all experience this unconditional love, and we have so many people who all see it now, and they get this tunnel vision for their twin, and they want to give all that unconditional love to their twin. And I call it tunnel vision because that's all they're focused on. At the beginning, when I learned that it was not just the unconditional love of your twin, it was the unconditional love of the universe and God, your spirit guides, and yourself, it looks different because you realize that you're not just supposed to have this unconditional love just for your twin. You're supposed to have it for yourself and everyone else out in the world. You're not supposed to just lose the expectations of your twin. You're supposed to release the expectations you have of everyone.
Yes.
As well as yourself.
Yes.
When I started trying to release the expectations, when you focus on one thing just for your twin, and you try to do this, it actually takes longer, I think, sometimes, because there's more to it. But some people have this tunnel vision that they're only focused on around their twin. So they think, okay, I'm only going to lose my expectations for my twin. I found it much happier for me when I didn't just expectations of my twin, when I started releasing expectations of people around me. Something that he would normally do and would kind of irritate me, even though he wasn't trying to do anything wrong, I just was like, okay, that's just him. I just stopped expecting things from everybody because I realized it was my expectations that were causing my own problems.
They were triggering you.
I was expecting people to behave in a certain way, and when they didn't do that, or they didn't give me what I expected, I was disappointed, and it caused me problems.
Right.
So it was just easier to just let them be them and have no expectations. So I would let my guides lead me to what I needed to work on. I would ask my guides during meditation, what do I need to know today? Some days they would lead me to the expectations. They would lead me to a lot of posts of people, saying things about expectations, or I would have things pop up that would always have to do around expectations. Something on YouTube or something here would pop up, or an article that I was looking at, or something in a book. Something somewhere would always get my attention to tell me what I needed to work on. When I actually was working on the expectations for my twin to release them, because I knew I needed to. My twin has a life. I in no way want to burden that life or impose myself on that life. I wanted to come to a place where I was okay with whatever interaction I had with my twin. And I knew that's where I needed to go. As I started working on releasing my expectations of my twin, I also found it was naturally releasing expectations of other people around me. It was not more of a conscious thought that I started doing everybody else. I was focusing on that one focus, and I realized it was affecting my behavior outside of me as it was affecting the behavior I was changing inside.
Exactly.
So I was taking that one thing that they told me to work on, and I wasn't just changing it with the aspect of changing it towards my twin. I ended up realizing I needed to change it towards how I treat everybody,
right.
how I behave outward, expectations, everything.
Because that's how I had to learn to tell the truth. I realized I'd always told Justin, I'd lied to Justin some at the beginning. And then I realized that I didn't like it when I lied to him because it made things go weird, the energy go wrong between us. So I quit lying to Justin. And then I realized how painful all the other untruths that I was telling everybody else in my whole entire world, how painful those were. I couldn't just do anything with Justin. I had to apply it uniformly to everybody that I was involved with and whose energy I shared.
And on my journey, I can't push anything. I am at the mercy of the universe when it comes to me and my twin coming together. There is no way around that. I can't go out and drive down the street and drive by his house. I can't stalk him on Facebook. I can't, or on any social media because he's not on any. There's no way around it. I literally realized that the universe is in control of when we come together. And there's no way around it.
I guess that's your patience. That's your patience lesson rearing its head.
Yeah, and that's where that came from. And then I had to find ways to accept it, that I didn't have access and that I would have to wait a long time, possibly, or forever, or that I may never come into contact with him physically, that I would just have to accept how my journey went for whatever it was. So I just tried to. The more I asked my guide, help me what I need to know and tell me this, the more it just kept changing. My perceptions changed sometimes from day to week to month until it grew and blossomed and until I heard this light go on that goes, ding, we got it.
Like Southwest Airlines. You're free to move about the spiritual universe now.
Yeah. But it was just, so many people would ask, well, how do you stay with your partner and all this other stuff? And so I asked the universe, what am I supposed to do with this? And they said, be patient. And I realized, okay, at first I was like, why? And they never answered. I don't ask why anymore. And I just learned that because it's not my job to understand why. And this is the second important lesson that Pradnya has changed. When her twin passed, that hit me very hard. And I realized you never know what's going to happen. And it is very important to listen to the universe. Because if you don't listen and you are so stubborn that you do it your way, whether the universe tells you or not, you have no idea what's going to happen. And it just turns out better. On the unfortunate event, she doesn't have her twin here. And I loved hearing about her story. And I loved reading all of her advice and her amazing journey. But it taught me to appreciate not only my twin, or if I ever come into contact with him, or even if I ever don't, how he's changed my life, or how the universe has used him as this tool to change my life. And that I also don't know how much time I have left with my partner. To learn to accept and be blessed by every day. This is when they tell you to focus on what you have in front of you, just live in the moment. And I realized that the reason they never told me why, because it wasn't important why I was supposed to stay with my partner. It wasn't important why I was supposed to, go through all of this alone. It was just important that I learn to follow their guidance and not ask why and not worry why, and to just do it blindly. And so through every crazy thing my guides have asked me to do, and I have a story about a printer that is absolutely hilarious, I have just learned that it all turns out better when I just follow. So I don't ask why I'm here, why I'm not there, why is my twin not here, why is this, that. Whatever is going on that I am not privy to, the universe has got it all under control for me. If you're told to stay with your partner, your current partner, your soulmate, or in a relationship, that it shouldn't be a bad thing if you want to stay. And that's kind of where I ended up going back on Quora, trying to help answer some people's questions, because a lot of them seem to say, how do I get through having a twin flame and this partner in my life? And trying to just tell them that you don't need to make these decisions now. The twin flame journey, everybody kind of gets this now attitude. I have to have it now. I need it now. What's going to happen now? Now, now, now. Unfortunately, there's kind of an air about it that says eventually.
That's almost the chaser energy and the impatience. It's, for many of us, it's part of the lesson of this life.
You know, it really helped me to refocus back on just appreciating every day I have with my partner. You know, I don't sit around and think about when my twin might ever show up because I have no control over it. So I sit around and think about it. I sit and I enjoy and I appreciate the moments I have with my partner. My husband takes very good care of me and my chronic disease. Without him, I would struggle. And had I done what so many people think of doing, of just up and leaving the relationship, my life would be a complete mess right now. So that choice was not my choice, and that choice was not for me. It was to figure out why kind of as I went. And I did. There was times when I got into the surrendering stage about my twin and the whole twin flame journey. It's kind of misleading when people talk about the surrendering stage. They say, you know, you get here and it's a fabulous stage. And even I agree, it's a fabulous stage. Just because you surrendered your twin, the journey doesn't stop. It actually starts and it picks up more. You're just not consumed by the thoughts of your twin because they were the motivation to get you here.
I mean, I prefer the term acceptance because acceptance is a flow. It's not like an end point, right? Oh, if you surrender, you wave the white flag and you're done, right? If you accept, you're like, okay, I've accepted and I'm integrating and I'm moving forward. But a lot of people want to focus on the term surrender because I guess it's more synonymous with letting go. But letting go is like a continual process, really. For me, it is. I still work on letting things go. It's not with my twin flame. It's with other people that I have soul contracts with. And I'm working on the soul contracts with them, or Justin and I are working on our soul contracts with them, right? It's like, I still have to let go. I'm not in surrender in all things. It's not one static state.
Yes. And then people would get there and they'd be like, well, why am I still being triggered? Or they would ask questions because you just actually got to the point where you're surrendering your connection with your twin to the universe. You didn't surrender everything.
Right.
We're not done yet. It sounds like it's an ending, but it's not. And there's so much more of a process that goes on. You still get triggered because you still have wounds to heal. They just don't have to be triggered by your twin anymore.
Exactly.
And you've just surrendered that part of the journey to them. To
Exactly.
me, surrendering is a process. When I tell people about this stage, you know, you get to surrendering stage, I explain that because they ask you how. Well, it's a process. You start at the beginning, you pick one thing, and as you slowly learn to surrender things, you eventually get to this point where you go, okay, now I'll surrender my twin flame journey. The when, the how, the why, all the questions about it. I will just come to the point where I surrender everything and let the universe deal with it. And that's when, you know, I kind of feel like the other part of your twin wakes up or they start going is because now you're not chasing them anymore.
Right.
The chaser energy can be I call it loud and bombarding. The universe is very soft and subtle and quiet. And we're drowning it out for our twins who still has to go through their whole process. Once they finally get to the point where they can start waking up, we need to let them do that. And I think that's where some people have trouble. It's very hard to be patient.
Of course. Is now a good time to tell the story about the printer? And then we probably have to say goodbye.
Oh, I went to go buy a printer. I needed a printer for a very specific set of purposes. I actually picked one out online that was, for lack of better word, pretty. It had color. It wasn't black. It wasn't white. It's actually like a coral color. And I liked it. So I went to go pick it out because they had one in stock. And I saw the printer. And I was like, okay, I know I'm here for this printer. I started thinking about it, like, oh, I don't think I want to spend that much on a printer. It was like $200. So I tried to convince myself that I didn't need that specific printer. I needed to get over the fact that it was pretty. I needed to get over the fact that, you know, I just didn't need all those features. So I tried to stand around and compare printers. With chronic fatigue, this is a very actually difficult task. But my guides learned to use my chronic fatigue to their benefit. All of a sudden, I'm standing there trying to pair printers, and I lose every thought in my head, and all of my energy has just been sucked out of me. So much so, I had to call my husband to come help me pick out a printer. And so he came to the store. We picked out one that was different from the original one. I went to go get the pretty one. And we took it home, and I decided not to unbox it. I went about my day, and the next morning I woke up. I told my husband, my spirit guide says I need to go back to Staples and get the printer I wanted. Don't know why, don't care. I'm tired of feeling this way. I realized they had zapped my energy. I had a dream. I woke up just knowing that this printer was not the printer that I should have picked. I should have just listened, because when I went in, they're just like, grab the printer and go. And I should have done that, because that's what they told me to do. And I know it was just something silly, but they literally were just showing me that I just need to listen. Just accept, listen, and trust. Don't doubt, but trust and listen. And I needed to stop doubting the universe, and I needed to stop doubting myself. Learn to have like this unequivocal belief and faith in myself and in the universe, and just let everything else fall together. So
beautiful. And they will always give you what you need, even if it doesn't look quite what you want.
They do. And I started adding a tagline on the bottom of my post, because I've learned this very strongly, that the universe does not give you what you think you want, but it gives you exactly what it knows you need, because it can see the journey in the entirety. We cannot. And that's what it's there for.
Thank you so much, Erinn. This has been wonderful. I think you and I could probably talk for hours. I know we can. We have before. I'd love to have you back. Maybe we could target a few different topics. And I love the way that you teach, and you have such a great perspective to share with the people whose journeys look more like yours than they do like mine. Because let's face it, your journey and my journey are pretty far opposite ends of the spectrum so far. And I just love it. And I really want you to share more about your journey with the audience. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for the 4th episode of our podcast bonus series, Portrait of a Twin Flame. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Justin's and my twin flame journey, please consider picking up our novella series. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and Apple audiobooks today. It's called Souls on Fire, Memoirs of a Twin Flame True Love Journey. Look for parts 1 and 2. If you'd like to share your story of twin flame connection, please reach out to us at podcast@twinflamewarriors.com. Maybe we'll share your story in an upcoming episode. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.